Week 1 of the 10th season of the GBA is finally upon us, and Playmore is taking on the Wolverhampton Weaviles. I, of course, am PM7, or John.
I am his editor and now co-owner of this prestigious team, Tyler. And John, I have to say, as we look at this opening matchup of the season, I find it rather convenient, although maybe rather inconvenient, that the first team we welcome to the Swamp this year is maybe not led in terms of stats, but led at their heart by Iron Leaves, maybe the #1 enemy of the entire PM7 brand outside of, well, its present form, Virizion.
That's very weird. It keeps showing up. It's supposed to be a very stupid little joke. It is a terrifying omen. I don't know why Iron Leaves is here, but I do like the fact that Walking Wake is also here. Both of those, the newest 2 Pokemon in Pokemon on one team. But Tyler, I was not worried about Virizion or its metal counterpart until now. But the thing that's really terrifying me is Great Tusk. Now, we've been looking over this team. We did a draft analysis. We weren't a part of the drafting, but there was a big weakness that worried me especially, and that would be a ground type. So Great Tusk there is really terrifying, but I think we can move over to the scouting report and see what our incredible coach brought to this game. How are we going to deal with Great Tusk? Well, I see a Kilowattrel, and I'm not sure if that will be the thing that can switch in every single time. But there is also a defensive Darkspawn, so it's nice to see Darkspawn getting brought early on. I'm a little worried about Great Tusk, but past that, Tyler, there's 2 of the same item that are pretty exciting to see. What are you seeing over there?
Yeah, weakness policy being doubled up on here is certainly a swing for the fences, and it's one that you almost have to take when there is so much of a threat against Roaring Moon. When you look across at a team that you could build to take on Roaring Moon, it's almost worst case scenario in our favor, at least on the surface in terms of what we can see. We don't know for sure what it's going to look like, but I personally, John, am not super excited about Screamtail being over there. And having a couple of options here for really bad weaknesses to be turned instantly into really big advantages, it's a big gamble, but I don't mind it. It'll be really, really cool if it pays off.
It would be pretty incredible, but hey, we're here to commentate the game. Let's see what the actual coach has brought to this match. I'm excited. And there he is, our coach, General Tarheel. That's a man I'd follow into battle, but look at this. Ooh, he did bring Iron Leaves.
He did, and the biggest thing I'm noticing, John, is an absence. I mentioned Screamtail.
No Screamtail? This is actually
very, very interesting that it's not there, and instead we're getting a matchup of regular Samurott and Hisuian Samurott.
Yeah, it's a very offensive team. I don't know who the defensive Pokemon would be here. I mean, it could be a bulkier Samurott. I mean, Great Tusk is a bulkier Mon, but that thing demolishes the team matchup. I think that might be 6 offensive Mons. That is really, really interesting. Roaring Moon could have a really fun time in this match if used properly.
We don't see Torkoal getting any kind of play here. I'm fascinated by that. We don't get to see the Sun team immediately, no Slitherwing either, so we get a chance to see some of those support Pokemon that we talked about a lot in our draft recap, and immediately, John, we're going to find out how much value they have.
No, absolutely, and I think a big reason for that is, I mean, the Weaviles, they got 3 Pokemon that can take advantage of the Sun with the photosynthesis, so was not an option this week for our team, but the battle has begun, starting out with the Dinosaur.
This is a battle of the Titans to open this thing up.
Now, this is a really, really bold move on Ben's part. We have the most important Pokemon on our team to lead off, to put a little pressure on the opponent.
So I'm just going to go right into Darkspawn.
Ginger was drafted for a reason, so let's get that shiny Darkspawn out here to take the Draco Meteor. That is a prediction and a half. You love to see it, but that's what I said earlier. Right, Tyler? This is a hyper-offensive team, most likely, that we are up against. He is not holding back. Throwing punches immediately. Really good first play.
Medicine does nothing to me right now. I'm literally just going to Baton Pass because he situates out into Gengar here.
I like Baton Pass. I agree here. I think you just have to switch some.
Well, and at this point, you're getting a little momentum. You predict the switch. You know that if you go for Baton Pass, you get the favorable matchup. A fantastic start to this battle. Obviously, no damage yet, but get the opportune switch to go against this Gengar. Now, the question is, what Pokemon will that be? Is it that Samurott? Is this how he gets spikes on the field, maybe?
I like the Samurott play here. You've got a couple of options in terms of favorable type matchup. I'm with you. I would go Hisui and Samurott and immediately get those spikes up. And nothing else, you force another switch for sure.
I'm sure Gengar is going to have some coverage to hit that Samurott, but I don't know if Gengar is going to want to stay in to take that
if
hit.
He's Focus Blast or some other type of shenanigans, that's fine.
There's a coach for a reason, but there is the Samurott switch. That's what we expected.
Coach.
I love the signature move, getting hazards up and damage at the same time. Just a game changer. Really, really interested to see how this unfolds, as there is a chance the Gengar stays in. It's going to outspeed, but Samurott could have Sucker Punch. So I think the switch is inevitable.
Yeah, and Ben, showed absolutely no hesitation in going with what we talked about with Ceaseless Edge. No matter what the switch is here. Oh, here we go.
Yep.
We get the spikes up.
Okay, this is what I was hoping to see. There is the Focus Sash. It makes sense to keep that Gengar in, but I really, really like this trade-off. We get spikes up. This thing can't switch in on the spikes. It no longer has Levitate, and I'm pretty sure we do have a priority move on the Samurott.
We do have Aqua Jet. It's another thing that we talked about during the draft recap. A sneaky move that not a lot of people think about with Samurott, and it forces the switch because of that threat.
Now, this was a very safe play on Ben's part. I think it was the correct play, but it is going to allow a little bit of momentum to go back to the opponent, which is a little worrying, but we do have a switch in for this Pokemon. Now, they're going to expect that, I'm sure, and there might be something up their sleeve ready to damage Ginger, so we might be finding out how much it can sponge, as I assume it really is the only switch in. Could be a sacrifice here as well, because Samurott has done what it needs to do, so.
He just use this again to see what he goes for. He does go for Steam here.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree there. Gengar is dead on switching. I'm pretty sure, unless I'm missing something big, a nice 1-for-1. Make sure there's not too much momentum thrown that way. Get the proper switch in. I do really like that.
I think I'm going to start clicking buttons.
Ben is trying to force the switch here and maybe go for a Dragon Dance.
I feel the Dragon Dance coming as well.
Ooh,
oh, maybe not.
The Terra.
And this is something that you did not get to experience at all during your time doing competitive battles.
No, I had a pretty lengthy draft league career, but none in this generation, not much in the generation before. So the fact that you can just bring a Pokemon in, change that type, and all of a sudden you're not going to get hit by that Draco Meteor super effectively, that's pretty special. Now, I don't know the damage output here. I don't know if it's worth risking.
This is dicey.
Roaring Moon? Yeah, I thought he was trying to force the switch. We don't have a dragon move here.
I feel like a lot of the battle hinges on this turn.
This is a really, really big moment. It's very clear. This could do a ridiculous amount of damage, though. Ooh! Okay, you just got to live here. Come on. There we go.
Right.
That's really, really nice. 2 Pokemon on the other side. Not as good as dead, but I mean, Leviathan was not easy to switch into. We got that Terra up. Obviously, the potential sweeper on our side, pretty weak at this point. Might be difficult to get a Dragon Dance off, but still can come in and do some good damage.
Yeah, it's now going to be fascinating to see where do we go from here. This play makes sense. Protect our potential sweeper, although a little tougher now with the damage. That was such a dicey play, and I think at least early on it paid off.
Yeah, okay, so there is the switch. I'm interested to see what the switch-in is going to be. With the Gengar just to sacrifice it, that makes a lot of sense. I really love the switch into Darkspun now, as the Roaring Moon is not going to be in a bad spot. Now, I'm not sure exactly what wants to take advantage. We're about to find out.
Awesome. Yeah. We are just clicking Roar.
It would have been really dicey, John, a hard read of Dragon Dancing there with Roaring Moon. and banking hard on that switch.
I love to see this because the Gengar already went down.
Yes.
Having spikes up for the entire game would have been really, really nice, of course, but the fact that the defog didn't happen before that Gengar got out of there is really, really nice. There's not going to be any immediate sacrifice. Bringing in the Samurott, which is interesting. A Pokemon I've used a decent amount, but back in 5th gen NU. So I'd like to think we have the better Samurott on our side.
We do, but we don't have much for water.
We are faster.
That is
my only concern.
He is
so
SD.
this is kind of what Samurott does. We do have Roar on the Darkspawn, so I'm not super worried about that right now. We're not going to be able to switch into any other Pokemon easily.
If he's Life Orb, the max he can do is 76 here, and we get that back, so I think I just Roar again.
I mean, this is why you bring Roar, right? Yeah. And now we're going to get our health back. Yeah, feel really good about this. It'd be nice if we still had spikes up to get a little bit more chip damage as things switch in, but we already know that this Frostmoth's not going to be able to do much against us. Be able to get another Wish Up, potentially, bring in the proper Pokemon. I like the position we're in right now.
The team we are up against has a lot of offensive capability, and I feel like that was just a little bit of a reminder of how careful we are going to have to be to keep them in check. Costly miss there.
Yeah, it's a very frustrating one, and I would say a little bit of a misplay. I would have really liked to see either a switch or the Wish. Obviously, the miss is unfortunate. I'm pretty confident that Ice Beam was always going to do a little bit more, and puts us in a very awkward spot as we definitely need to switch. Really only one Pokemon at this point. Well, actually two, because we do have the Assault Vest on the Glamora. I can't sleep on that Pokemon. It's brand new to me and competitive, and I'd like to see what it can do. The thing I am worried about here, though, is with that Darkspawn very weak, we really do not have a good switch in to the Great Tusk. So, got to be really, really careful about that. Should be able to eat this up. Ooh, a little bit more than I expected. But this forces a switch. It just has to.
I would hope so. I don't think you sack here. I agree with you, though, on the Great Tusk is looking really, really scary right now, and I'm glad you brought it back up to get it onto the forefront again, because I wasn't even thinking about Great Tusk. I was watching how this is unfolding, and I'm still super scared about what we could see from Walking Wake.
Yeah. Well,
we don't have the greatest counter for it either at this point.
When you make a draft league, build, you're trying to get ready for 11 Pokemon. And a lot of the times you only have 1 or 2 Pokemon that can take on the scariest threat on your opponent's side. You get into the battle, everything is perfect in your mind, but all of a sudden that defensive Pokemon below half health, it's not going to be easy to heal that thing up. And as soon as that big threat is switched in, really, really tough to take those hits now. So it's still a tie game. It's not looking too bad. Is this trying to force the switch? A little bit of a double switch here by the Beneral. This is why he's our coach. Yes, the double switch. You love that. He brings in a Pokemon, knows his opponent has to switch, predicts that switch, and now look at that. That is a top tier play. I love to see that. The only issue here, of course, is that Volt Switch. As we were looking through the team, Tyler, I really like the fact that Kilowattrel had U-turn and Volt Switch. The issue here is if he goes for that Volt Switch and we see Great Tusk, we are losing a Pokemon and I will be sad.
It's a super dicey play. I'll ask you, John, do you think it's the right play in this spot?
It's difficult because he brings in our Glamora, forces the switch, correctly predicts the switch with the Samurott, brings in the proper Pokemon here. All of that is fantastic. Goes for the Volt Switch. He stays in, gets rid of that berry. I would say this was pretty flawless. I am really, really happy with what we've seen. The only issue, though, is that Samurott was ready to take an electric move. We're bringing in Ginger. We already know that Ginger's not going to be able to take this hit, most likely, unless leftovers can bring us to a point where we can take that hit after a Swords Dance, but instead straight for the Aqua Cutter, which I actually really love to see.
That was such a fascinating turn because I was with you in terms of just how scary it is. If you go for the electric move there and we get the Great Tusk switch in, that would have been the battle.
Yeah.
Now we get the Swords Dance.
Okay, that was a really good prediction. on our opponent's part there. You know, Ben going for the wish, hoping that there's a switch out there. Instead, Swords Dancing, even if there's a roar, his team's so offensive, it doesn't really matter what gets switched in. This does put us in a really, really bad spot. It kind of comes down to, can Kilowattrel take this thing out with an electric move and not be taken down by the priority? I don't think it would. I think it should be fine if we lose Ginger here and bring in the Kilowattrel, but this is not an ideal spot. It's what I said earlier. You bring the defensive Pokemon, everything is great in theory. As soon as that thing is below half health, it gets real dicey. Interesting. Okay. I do like getting damage there.
I do too. I think it was really risky going back to that turn before to bank on the switch, because we have seen throughout this battle, Weavile has shown that he was going to be extremely aggressive with that Sandwich. We saw the Swords Dance earlier, kind of tipped his hand looking back. Yeah. I'm with you. I would have forced the switch there, already knowing in the back of your mind, you've seen this before, there's always been aggression. I would have forced that thing out rather than banking on the switch, because we just haven't seen that so far in this battle.
And this is a really pivotal point. I don't think the Samurot's in Torrent range. I could be wrong. It's really close to Torrent. I'm pretty sure Kilowattrel should be able to live.
Either way, Kilowattrel kills.
I don't know if there's much of a choice here, and that's where, you know, it's a very offensive team. I mean, his foot has been on the gas this entire time. Every time that Samurot's in, trying to get a Swords Dance up. Aqua Jet, that's what I was worried about. There we go. Live that. That's really big. The Samurott is gone, and I mean that's one threat out of the way. We don't lose Kilowattrel here. Great Tusk has not been brought in on this thing, so maybe I've been over worried about it. I don't know. I am very...
We still don't have too much to counter it.
But it doesn't really matter. At this point, it's a very offensive game. We have two Pokemon with weakness policy left, Glamora, and then the bird high in the skies. So we're going to go down swinging, if nothing else. And I'm really interested to see what we will see on the other side. I'm not super worried about the Frostmoth. So, and we do see the Frostmoth immediately. Huh.
Frostmoth has gotten a lot of run in this battle.
Yeah, I feel like I need to do a little bit of a search really quickly. Am I missing something with Frostmoth? Can that thing do anything to Heatran? You know, again, I played a lot of Draft League. I stopped in Gen 8, so the Moth in the Sky, maybe I missed something here, but I just cannot fathom what this thing could possibly do against the Heatran.
I wonder if Heatran is the switch here, or if we go back to Glamora. We saw that work out earlier. Took a little more damage, like you said, than we would have liked to have seen.
It's got to solve best for a reason.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to be able to take the hit. Obviously, there's a chance of freeze, knock on wood. But it will force the switch, and it will be able to get damage on the next thing.
Oh.
Okay, this is what I had missed in the scouting report. It's going to be able to Terra up. Very interesting. What Terra is that going to be? Water. That is why. That's probably why the Heatran has weakness policy.
That makes perfect sense.
Okay. But it does make this switch a lot less effective. Okay. Yeah, that's going to be one to ask the coach about. It was a really good Terra on the opponent. Hey, you asked me earlier, right? Like, have you really done anything with Terras? The answer is no. This is my first experience with Terras in Draft League.
You had the ultimate threat in there in Kilowattrel, and yet the opponent takes the gamble to water Terra, knowing full-fledged that you're going to make that switch. Super bold prediction, and unfortunately for our cause, paid off.
No, there's been some pretty good predictions on our side, but that was a really good play, and just the offense on that side. You know, I saw the defog on Frostmoth. I was like, maybe I was wrong. Maybe it's not 6 offensive Pokemon. No, I'm pretty sure I was correct. That is, I mean, it could be a bulkier Frostmoth, but that thing is not messing around. Our 2 best Pokemon for Frostmoth with Heatran and Glamora, not in a great spot. really terrifying, and our best Pokemon to take this Pokemon down is almost dead with a Kilowattrel. Really, really scary stuff here.
I assume the thought process here, just try to get any damage you can.
I mean, there's a good chance of a switch here. Well, no, I mean, they don't know we have the weakness policy, so yeah, I mean, I think Ben was hoping for the switch. Outsped anyways, and that, yeah, it wouldn't have mattered. So hope for the switch, Dragon Pulse next turn if we live, and get some good damage off. And hopefully that would allow Roaring Moon to come in, maybe force a switch, get a Dragon Dance off, or just finish this off with a Crunch. It's not looking incredible for us here, but I'm not counting Roaring Moon out. And this is a +2 Heatran. Dragon Pulse could catch a Pokemon off guard. There could be a really big switch, but I'm a little worried that this is not going to be enough to take Frostmoth out.
Wasn't even close.
No, this is a really, really specially defensive Pokemon, if I am correct. And, well, decently special defensive with 90 special defense, but still, you know, able to take that pretty easily, not stab. That offense was, man, very overpowering, but not over yet. This
Still
was
got Roaring Moon.
Interesting play here. Do we go just to try to get that kill, or do you go for the Hail Mary Dragon Dance? I'm pretty sure you're forced into a crunch, but there is always a chance of a crazy blunder on the other side. No, obviously, that's the right play. The chances of just Weavile switching were probably less than 1%, but you never know.
Here comes the big threat. I figured this would be the time.
Yeah, it's a little deflating to see that come in. Acrobatics is super effective here. I don't think there's a chance it kills, but where there's a will, there's a way, Tyler. Where there's a will, there's a way.
I think that there was maybe a faint hope that by the time acrobatics was needed, that weakness policy would be used up, and that thing would pack a much bigger punch.
Weakness policy is a really boom or bust item, and when it works, boy, does it work. And when it doesn't work, boy, does it not work. That's, you know, a little egg on my face. I was worried about the ground moves. This guy came in close combat immediately, so you know, what do I know is the question here. What do I really know? Now,
all right, Kilowattrel. No issue here. Just win. Ignore that your only flying type move hurts yourself.
I've been in the spot many times. It is the worst part of Draft League. You're doing a battle live. You came in with such high hopes. Week 1, you know that you're going to lose the battle, and all you can do is just sit there, feel really deflated. And it's a brutal feeling, you know? I mean, this was a really good battle for a long ways into it. At some point, that offense, really just that Terra, was enough to turn the tides. And it was, you know, that point, way too much on the other side. A lot of bulky offensive Pokemon over there, too, as we saw. The acrobatics simply did not do enough damage. I'm excited to talk to our coach after this battle. I think we've done enough talking, Tyler. I've had a lot of fun commentating alongside you. It's going to be a fun season, but I think I'm ready to hear what our coach was thinking in this battle.
We are very happy. I guess happy might be a strong term considering the results of the match, but we're certainly content to be joined now by our esteemed head coach, Ben. Before we even talk about the match, Ben, I'm sure we might want to delay that for as long as possible. I do have to ask you, how does it feel to have this season officially underway and be head coach of this Playmore squad?
Yeah, I mean, first off, thank you guys so much for having me in here after what just happened. I mean, I don't know what match you're talking about anyways. Maybe you can tell me after I answer this question. But I'm very excited to be coach for Playmore Esports. I'm very close to the head owner on the mic, PM7, good friend, good buddy of mine. We used to do battles ourselves long ago, even together on the same screen. And it just feels good to be back in Draft League. Definitely been absent from Wi-Fi for a bit. This recent battle was... I don't remember the last time I did one like this on Wi-Fi. I did a little bit on Showdown here and there, but this was definitely a reintroduction to the scene. And I was a little nervy, not gonna lie, a little nervy, but I'm excited to be a coach for this entire season.
Ben, I wanted to ask about the matchup. Now, when I saw the team that your opponent brought, he played great, he built great. That's very, very clear. But when I saw the matchup, very hyper offensive. I can't imagine that's what you were expecting with some of the Pokemon you brought. So I am curious, what were you expecting to see, and how did what he brought really affect you in the battle?
Yeah, of course. I was very surprised. You might have been able to tell at the initial start of the battle with what he brought. The fact that he had one of the best counters to Roaring Moon in the game in Screamtail, and he opted not to bring it, kind of blew my mind. It really just stopped setup on my side as a whole because Speedy Encore is just so good. Wish Pass for his team is pretty beneficial because even though it's very offensive what he brought, or what he even could have brought on other ends, it's just like Wish Pass is still good because it's pretty bulky, most of his Pokemon, unlike the likes of like Gengar or something like that. So when I first saw no Screamtail and no Rotom Heat, I was very surprised. Those are two things that always came in any of the mocks that I did with our assistant coach, John Jr. We felt like that was very predominant, those two that are like just likely to come, period, because like I said, Encore is very free against my team. And then as for Rotom Heat, Overheats could have been potentially doing more in the sun, and we felt like Volt Switch pivots and screens were just very easy versus my team, since Sandaconda was very unlikely in this matchup to come on our end. We are very scared of the Terra Water Frostmoth as well, so immediately seeing that quivered a little bit, pun intended. And then Great Tusk, obviously just an absolute unit. There was plenty of things we were afraid of in this matchup, but not seeing Screamtail and Rotom Heat threw me off. When I saw Samurott, I was confused. I was like, I thought I was the only one with Samurott in this game. I literally messaged them, why do you have a Suian Samurott? Because I just didn't expect a normal Samurott to come. If he did it purely for thumbnail potential and just to have the two homies face one another since they grew up together, I completely understand. But no, his composition definitely threw me off. During the game, obviously our Roaring Moon set was built around being able to set up 1v1 versus that Screamtail, have the weakness policy procced and work from there. I didn't really have a chance to get that all set up in this game for that reason. A lot of the things that were going to hit me super effectively might have just straight up KO'd me, or at the very least, it's just too questionable of what they could do, but it worked out in his favor, and that really just comes down to knowing the coach or not in prep, and we're going to see it a lot. I don't know too many coaches in this league overall and how I expect them to play, so this was definitely something where just Weavile, I had no idea going into the match.
One of the moments that stood out particularly early on to me and John was the early Terra of the Roaring Moon. You talked about maybe not knowing if you would have an opportunity to set up that win con. Was that just an aggressive move, knowing there wasn't really any surefire way to win the battle outside of being aggressive early on, or what went into that early Terra?
The early Terra was truly just a misplay. I had no initial thoughts on how to deal with the Walking Wake that turn after I lost to Suian Samurott. Because nothing in my mind seemed like the best option, considering I didn't see most of the other things in the back that were a threat. So Kilowattrel, for example, didn't seem like a good idea to go into, purely because I wasn't sure what was going to happen. And if for some reason I costed anything on my team, because Volt Switch was not realistic, because something on my team is just going to be taking a massive chunk of damage. I wasn't living anything if I straight in just a normal Dark Dragon typing. So I knew I had to Terra and just go for the Dark Crunch. At that point, as soon as I switched into Roaring Moon, it was kind of a misplay. Potentially I could have Dragon Dance, but once again, I'm not doing anything to Great Tusk without my weakness policy prop. So Glamora might have been the better play in Dazzling Gleam because I lived anything that he went for due to my Assault Vest. But hindsight, you know.
Mentioned maybe a couple of misplays, and I know there's some rust to knock off, and especially a lot of getting familiar with, as you mentioned, with the other coaches in the league. So from a coaching standpoint, coming off a tough opening week, where does Playmore go from here? Where does our head coach, how do we move forward from this opening loss and make sure that that turnaround is a bit more immediate heading into the next week?
I'm honestly glad you asked that, because after this loss, in between the about 15 minutes of me losing into getting into this interview, thanks to the power of, editing and time skipping, everything of the sort. I had a very small reflection on the shore looking onto the beach on high tide, and I thought, what do the best coaches have that I don't? Thinking about like great NFL coach Andy Reid or the GOAT himself, Ted Lasso. They only have mustaches. And John, I don't know if you remember, but I have a goatee here.
Oh, I remember, Coach. The greatest outfit in the game. Are you saying what I think you're saying?
I'm actively shaving. I wanted to be known. I've had this since the beginning of quarantine, and I only trim it. This is actually going to take a while to finish.
But that's the dedication you can expect from this team. Sure, we might not always win. Hey, there's a lot of good coaches in this league. I know you don't want to hear me say it, but there's a lot of good coaches, and it's not always going to go our way. But I'm not sure if there's a coach out there this dedicated. So you got to watch out for week 2.
There's a lot of good. There's a whole lot of good coaches. Ain't a lot of great ones.
So fans, the only thing I must ask you is, are you ready for week 2?